If you'll work your way down, we'll get started with the second part of the service.
Is that right there for me? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
That means Maggie's got to sit down and quit visiting.
Timing you had it right, but you didn't know. I wrote it.
I announced one week that, you heard of the town crier, the person goes around giving all the news and sharing everything with everybody, and I said, man, we just need a church crier. The next thing I know, after service, there's about 10 people around me crying. I'm like, okay, y'all didn't get what I was talking about.
Is that the joke of the day?
No, that's not the joke. I don't know, it depends on which one's funnier, it might be.
I can't believe that he's coming from the peanut gallery.
Bad influence.
So, the other day, Bubba was driving along the road on his way to church, and he didn't notice the red light and that it was turned red, and he just plowed into the back end of a car. And he just felt so bad about it. And he said, John, man, I should have been paying attention. And he said, and I hit this car, and I said, really, what happened next? He said, well, this guy got out of the car, and it was a dwarf. I said, really? He said, yeah. And he said, and he walked up to me, and he said, I'm not happy. And he said, I looked at him, and he said, you know how you're stressed, and you have this stuff going on in your life, and you suddenly, something just pops in your mind, and you think, this is the only time I'll get a chance to say this. And so he said, and that's just what happened to me. And I looked at him and said, okay, then, who are you? Now think about it. I'm not sleepy, dopey.
Hey, if you had
Okay, the first one was a joke, okay? The second one was a story. The second one said, I'm Maggie.
Amen. I was going to say, are you grumpy?
That's I don't know if you've heard the song that was published back in 1969, and it was sang by B.J. Thomas. But to me, it was one of the many songs that I loved during that era of my time. And you may have heard it, you may not, but the title of it, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. And during one of my trying times, that song happened to come onto the radio, and as I listened to it, I said, man, there's a message there. It may not be a gospel song, but it does have a gospel message in it. And so this morning I kind of thought about it, and listening to it took me also back to the Apollo 13. I don't know if you're familiar with that particular segment during our moon escapades as we were trying to put men on the moon. But Apollo 13 was the third moon launch off of NASA, where they had a crew that were going to leave the Earth and loop around the moon and then set the lunar landing off and go down. And everything started very successfully. The launch was great. Everything was on time. There were no storms that inhibited it from departing, and so it looked just like a normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill launch to NASA. And about 55 hours into the flight, suddenly there was a huge boom, an explosion as one of the oxygen tanks exploded. And of course, the astronauts really didn't know what had happened, and neither did NASA, but a lot of the things that they were reading or that were coming back through the airwaves suddenly were showing wrong or offline or having difficulty. And they began to ask, and the astronauts began to look out the window and see what you can find or look for things, but they hadn't put on their protective gear. But what ended up happening is a great catastrophe that could have turned into a worse one. These gentlemen went from a moment of great exhilaration, of great excitement, of great feeling of success to one of sudden dread and fear. They had a goal of landing on the moon, and now that goal was changed in their life because suddenly there was a storm. There was suddenly raindrops falling on their head. They suddenly had to change their goal from trying to get to the moon to trying to find a way to get home safely. And NASA, was at odds ends with what to do. And of course, there was a great movie put out by it that really shows some of the links that they went to and the hours put in by individuals to try and find a way to make this ship that had little oxygen, little electricity, and little of the things that it needed to get back, how to find and work all these things so that they could get the ship safely home. Probably one of the darkest, scariest moments of this journey was when the ship was to go around. They needed speed, so they instructed them, you need to head toward the moon and get caught by the gravity of the moon, and we're going to do what's called a slingshot. You're going to go around the backside of the moon, and as you come around that, you're going to be picking up speed. And when you do, we're going to pull off of the gravity of the moon and use that speed to get you back home. The only problem was that there was going to be a length of time where they were out of communication with one another. NASA wouldn't know if they blew up on the other side of the moon or if they caved into the moon or what would happen. And the astronauts had no idea of what was going on Earth. And the other thing is, something happened, they had nobody to talk to, nobody to help them walk through procedures and roles that needed to be played at this particular time. They were going to be totally in the dark. I don't know if you've ever been there in life. There are times when the rain is coming down so hard you can't see in front of your face. I've been in several of those incidences in my life. I remember traveling to Colorado one day with my wife. We was going up to district council to meet with all the churches of our district. And on the way there, just out of the border of Colorado, a storm came down and it was pouring, and people were just pulling over the side of the road they couldn't see. And I just felt like I could see enough to still keep going, but went from down to 70 to 65. No, just kidding. Went down from 70 to about 20 or 15, and still was having difficulty seeing. And then I noticed that there were those who were trying the same thing I was and ended up in the ditch over to the side of me. And I decided, well, we better pull over and stop. But there are times that the darkness can come in our lives. There are times that the rain can be dropping so hard that we find suddenly we're at a standstill in life. Some people may be feeling that today as they face this particular drama that's taking place in our land and in our country. A lot of people are fearful, and many should be, because many have died of catching COVID. And suddenly their goals, their visions, their dreams, all have changed. I have found that in my life. There's just a lot of things that I was planning and hoping and looking forward to doing this year that suddenly have had to be put on hold. And you really have a hard time making goals. Just when I was getting ready to start having leaders meeting and start putting things back together in the church and start having ministries meet together, suddenly they came down, well, we want you to stop where you are and stay at a standstill, and some of you, you may have to back up, but one of the things we don't want anybody doing is moving forward. Stop, slow down. Put on hold all your dreams, all your expectations, all your desires, all your future plans. And some of you may have had to do that in your life. One of the things that really hit me this morning is that song, Live Like You're Dying. I remember that song and when it came out, and I just thought it was an awesome song. And it's even more so since I'm going through what I'm going through, that song generates within me a reverberation of don't get caught. Don't stop planning, don't stop dreaming, don't stop moving forward, don't let things keep you. Remember what's in your sight, what's in your hopes, what's in your dreams, and keep moving forward. And that's what the song is about. You agree with me? Always live like you're dying. Being in Superman's space. Ride Fu Manchu. Climb the mountain. Live life to the extreme. That's what the astronauts found themselves doing that day. In spite of the storm in their life, what it's going to do is become a momentum, become a monument of the power of God and of the human ingenuity that was involved and of the heroism by those individuals caught in that spacecraft. That's what darkness should do, is not bring out the worst qualities in individuals like we're seeing today in America. But darkness should bring out the good qualities that exist and reside within an individual. To me, that's what Apollo 13 was about. To me, that's what the song Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head is all about. And as we get toward the end of the sermon, I will share with you the words of the song if you don't remember them, but it's all about the rain coming down and the view of a person of that rain, and it showed the characteristics that were in him, good characteristic qualities we need in the darkness. What are the qualities we need in the darkness? You, O Lord, keep my lamp burning. You turn my darkness into light. Oh, how true that is. Even in our darkest times, God can turn on the light of heaven. He can turn on the SON light. And everything in our lives can change. When raindrops keep falling on your head, remember, one must live by faith. Amen? I think sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. Darkness is designed to keep you in the dark, to keep you from being able to see it. It's designed to blind you to what you need to do, where you need to go, and what you need to be. It's there to stop your movements. Think about it. If you're in a room, I remember one roping me and Mary were at, and it was kind of storming, and we were inside this arena, and the lights were on, and it was just great. It was just as bright as can be, but the storm was just roaring. And suddenly you hear this boom, and you couldn't even say 1001. Well, we saw this flash, and then you couldn't count 1001 before you heard the boom, and that means it was close. And suddenly every light in the place went out. Here were hundreds of riders on horses in the middle of this chaos. Some horses, it didn't bother them one bit. Other horses, you could tell, there was all kinds. I wish I could have seen, because there was all kinds of commotions going on. You heard people and horses clanging into fences and banging into one another. And what was sad is in the middle of the arena, just as the guy nodded his head and was chasing a cow, all the lights went out. Yeah, well, that's what I asked him. I said, how'd you do? He said, what do you mean how'd I do? I couldn't see a thing. I thought, how scary. But that's what darkness does. It's there to plant fear in you. It's there to stop you. It's there to keep you from moving forward. Of course, I'm using darkness as the same term as raindrops, but you know, light raindrops are okay, but heavy rain is going to do the same thing. It can inhibit you. I know when it's raining, the last thing I'm going to do is try to make a run for it. I'm just going to try and find the closest shelter where I am. You know, sometimes just running from the house to the barn, if it's raining, I'll be so soaked that it looks like I'm in the shower. It's like, Mary's like, it didn't rain that hard. Yeah, well, it took me a little time, dear. I'm sorry. You know, what can I say? When the lights go out, does your eyesight or does your face sight kick in? Now, I don't know about you, but there's been times that I've left the light on in the bedroom and it's dark outside and I have to get up out of the warm bed and walk over and you have to shut the light down. The minute you do, guess what? Darkness. You can't see. What's even worse is darkness after you had a lot of light. Your eyes take so much longer to adjust. And one of the things I've learned is I've got to have faith at that moment. He said, what are you going to have faith about? Well, you know, I've got to believe that beds are inanimate objects. I've got to believe that furniture is an inanimate object. I've got to believe that the dresser is an inanimate object. Otherwise, if I believe they were real and alive, then my fear is that they're walking out in front of me. They're going to jump on me in the dark. They're going to get me. You know, as a kid, we had those kind of dreams, did we? Mom, don't turn out the light because the boogeyman's underneath the bed. And as long as the light's on, there's no boogeyman. But the minute you turn the light off, here he comes. No matter what Mom said, I firmly believed in the boogeyman. I have seen him in the shadows on my wall. He existed. And you have too. But the difference as we get adults, we begin to separate true reality from fantasy. Well, some of us do. You know, I had an adult tell me the other day they still believed in Santa Claus. Okay. That's why there's still 66,000 members in the Flat Earth Society. There's just some who have fantasies. But when the darkness comes, when the hard rain comes down, suddenly you've lost that eyesight. What do you trust in? What do you depend on? Is your faith in control? Or do suddenly you get scared and fearful and you worry? Your ability in the darkness to see comes through your ability to have faith. I like Genesis chapter 3 when I'm in a dark time. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth had no form whatsoever, and it looked like it was just void. And God hovered over the darkness. In other words, everything was dark. There was nothing to see and nothing to be seen. But God, He hung there. He was over that darkness. Think about that. Suddenly you're in darkness, and suddenly your life is now in the void, and it's nothing to see and nothing to be seen. What is there with you? What is standing next to you? Who is watching over you and protecting you and seeing that you are safe? Just as He watched over the world as it was being formed, as it was being made, as it was being created, He is there watching over you as you go through your darkness, as you go through your trial, as you lose your sight. He's there saying, "Oh, my child, only believe." Mark 9:23, what did He say to that man? If thou canst, all things are possible as you believe. What a thought this morning. God there over us. I like Psalms 91, that he's given his angels charge over you. In the darkness, lest you pick up your foot and stumble. They will pick you up. You will be caught up in the hands of angels to keep you from stumbling. That's the kind of God we got. But you got to believe it. You got to have that trust. As I walk across that dark bedroom, I'm not taking baby steps. I'm not going lightly forward. I know where the bed is. I know how far away it is. And I take those big strides and get into the bed because I want to get under the warm covers. But I don't do that in a new environment. You know, you do that in a hotel, you turn out the lights and suddenly you say, okay, how far away was the bed? Where was that corner from the door? Where was it? Did I close the door or was it open? And you're walking and because you don't want to stub that toe, because that little toe will give you all kinds of fits for days for hurting it. Paul said in 2 Corinthians 5:7, we walk not by sight, by faith in the Lord our God. Guys, you can't see in the darkness. You can't see in the storms. You can't see when the rain is heavily falling. But God can. God wants us to realize it's not by sight that we need to be walking at that moment, but it's a faith moment. It's a faith-building moment. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And lean not unto your own sight. How quick we lose sight of the finish line in darkness. An American swimmer named Florence Chadwick ran into the same problem in 1952. Of course, she had set many international records already, swimming the English Channel, doing that several times each time, increasing her speed in doing that and defeating others. And many other things did she do in swimming, not only in that, but in particular games that were taking place with swimming. She was setting records in the women's division. In 1952, she became the first woman to swim 21 miles across the Catalina Channel. That's between Catalina and California. 21 miles. But her first attempt, as she got put into the water, it was stormy and there was a thick fog. And as they were rowing and going, she was swimming in all that waves beating her and hitting her and not being able to see. And then she started hearing gunshots. And they're shooting the sharks in hopes of keeping her alive. So she's got the storm in front of her. She's got the fog that is keeping her from seeing it. And she's got the cold of the water. All of these things working against her dreams, her hopes, her desires. In 15 hours and 55 minutes, she felt like she couldn't go. She said, I can't bear another second. Y'all need to get me out. She did not realize that she was a half a mile from the California coast. And she said, if only I had been able to see, I would not have stopped. If only I would have been able to realize how close to the line I was, I would have finished. How often you and I, in our darkness, in our storms, when the fog has come in heavily and we now cannot see, how often we quit just before we cross the line. 1984 Olympics, I remember this story through the CBS Sports News, and they were running the marathon, and this guy from Mexico, was his first time. He made it for his country. Of course, they really have never had any entries before this because nobody really ran the marathon much there. And he was running the marathon, and he's going to be the last person to cross the line. In fact, everybody's 3 hours ahead of him. Everybody along the way is telling him, you don't have to go on, the race is done, everybody's already crossed. You can quit. Save yourself, save the energy. And what he said back to them was this: my country did not send me to quit, they sent me to finish. Wow. Our God didn't send us to quit, to give up, to give in. He sent us to finish, to cross the line, to say, I have fought a good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Those had to be stark words to her, to have to say, I know I could have made it. I know I could have made it. Easy to lose sight of your dreams, your hopes, your visions, your goals, and your destiny when you're in the darkness, when the storm. You have a tendency of not focusing on those, but focusing on the storm of your life. Amen. Don't let anything, don't let this COVID scare, don't let this thing the nation is involved in scare you. Keep your dreams, keep your goals, keep your visions. Go out and do it in spite of what's going on. Live it like you are dying. Falling rain is a journey. Darkness is a journey. I like this scripture. Though I walk through the valley of the shadows of death, I will fear no evil, for God is with me. Wow. We weren't created to stay in darkness. We weren't created to stay in the shadows. We weren't created to live in fear and get ourselves locked in. We weren't created to be out of the sunlight. There are plants that are made for darkness. There's areas in my yard that I've had to go to a nursery and say, look, I've got this big patch area. I need something that will grow in that, because I plant grass and it just won't grow. It needs the sunlight. It needs to have that light shine on it. It doesn't survive in darkness. And they'll give me some plants that do well in shade. The moment they get out of shade, though, guess what? They die. God spiritually, God created us to be light, to be in the light. In fact, He calls us the children of light. We've got to have the light. As the light shines in us, and then we've got to be the light that shines on others. If we remove ourselves from the light, then we have no light to shine. And if we don't get out and let the light shine, then people have no way of knowing God. We are children of the light for several reasons. That's why He said, don't put yourself under a bushel. Nobody hides the candle, but they put it on a candlestick for display so that all might see that enter into the house. Count of Monte Cristo said this: life is a storm, my young friend. You will bask in the sunlight one moment and be shattered on the rocks the next. How true is that? What makes a man is what you do when that storm comes. I guess I need to change that. None of that is politically correct, is it, Maggie? Somebody reminded me that the other day when I said, I'm going into the master's bedroom. You can't call it that anymore. But you know what? I'm going to still call it that.
Yeah.
Remember the two key words in Psalms 23? Though I walk through. What that says to me doesn't speak permanence. When you walk through the church, you walk in one door and you walk out the other. You walk through the church. There was an entry point in your life that you came into the church. There's an entry point, you left the church. It's not, though I stay in the valley of death, that's not what he's saying here. There's no words about staying. There's no words about permanence. There's no words about this is where you need to hang pictures. This is where you need to live. This is where you need to put your sofa. It says walk through. Guys, it's a journey. You're going to have a lot of rain falling. You're going to have a lot of darkness. You're going to have a lot of fog, but it's only part of the journey. Get it over with. Some of us like playing in the dark. We like hanging out there. Man, I don't know about you, but when I'm going through the valley of shadows of death, I want to get out as quickly as possible. Amen? So he said, you walk through. You're not here to live. Don't stop. Don't quit. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on who you are. Don't give up on God. Just keep walking. Sooner or later, the sun will shine. Most people work hard at trying to calm the storm instead of calming themselves in the storm. Amen? I like what Paul said. Man, I was hard pressed on every side. Said pressure was everywhere. But you know what? God didn't let me get crushed. I was perplexed. But I never got in despair. I was persecuted. I was beaten. I had lashes across my back. I could stoned. I could go through a list of things that Paul went through. He said that I went through this persecution, but I was never, ever abandoned. We were struck down often, but they could not destroy us. Those first words in those statements speak about permanence, but the second words speak about going through it, doesn't it? I was crushed on all sides, but I got through it. I was perplexed, but finally I was not in despair. I was persecuted, but I realized I was not abandoned. I'm on the other side. I was struck down, but they couldn't destroy me. I won. I crossed the line. I finished. Lastly, God does his best work in the darkness. Oh, we forget that. I don't know if you can see this picture. I hope you can. This is drawn by Chris Bennett. He's an artist. I happened to see him young days of his life when he was drawing and needing money, and I bought this. But it just hit me because it's God there creating the earth. It's a man there with a magnifying glass, and he's carving out the earth out of this chunk of dirt. And I just looked at that. And I don't know if he believed in God or not, but it told me that there's somewhere in him that God had spoke to him, or he had read the Genesis chapter 3, because that looks just like God forming the earth out of the void, out of the darkness. Realize that God created the earth in darkness? That was some of his best work. Would you agree with me? You realize he created you and me in darkness? He says we are his best work ever. We are masterpieces unto God. We're apples of gold and settings of silver. Wow. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. When did he do that? Parted the ocean, parted the Red Sea at night. God wants you to know when it's your darkest time, that's when he does his greatest work. God wants you to know when you face your greatest dilemma, when you face your greatest fears, when you face your greatest raindrops, when you face your greatest difficulties in life, God wants you to know that's when he does his greatest miracles. Amen? Guys, if you don't have darkness, you don't have miracles. We got to remember that. Because God can only work when it's impossible for you. God does his best work in our bleakest and darkest times. A young girl born in 1820 went blind at only 6 weeks of age when an unlicensed doctor treated her mild eye infection with a hot mustard home remedy permanently scarring her eyes. As she grew, she was determined not to become bitter because of her condition and not to be confined by the chains of darkness. when she was only 8 years old. Listen to what she wrote. Oh, what a happy soul I am, although I cannot see. I am resolved that in this world content that I will be. How many blessings I enjoy that other people don't. To weep and sigh because I'm blind. I cannot and I won't. Wow. How about somebody who had a reason to give up and quit? Bad day is not a bad day if it brings you closer to God. A good day is not a good day if it doesn't bring you closer to God. Amen. Raindrops. I'm not going to sing it. I could. Raindrops keep on.
Oh, no.
And I'm just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed. Nothing seems to fit. You've been there in life? Been there in marriages? Been there with teens? Been there with babies? Been there with grandsons? Those raindrops, they keep falling on my head. So I just had to do some talking to the sun. Of course, I put in there S-U-N when I sing it. And I said, I don't like the way you're getting things done. I feel like you're sleeping on the job, bud. Those raindrops are falling on my head. They keep falling. But there's one thing I know. The blues, they send to meet me. They're not going to defeat me. Because it won't be long till happiness steps up to greet me. Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turning red. You know why? Because crying over it's not for me. Because I'm never going to stop the rain by complaining. Because I'm free. Nothing's going to ever worry me. And there's some spiritual tones in that song. Probably never was meant to be. That in itself could be a sermon. About 5 points right there I see that could be a great sermon. How to handle raindrops in your life. If you're in your dark times, I'm sorry. If you're facing your difficulties that seem unsurmountable, I'm sorry. There are things in your life that make you feel like you can't go on. I'm sorry. Those are not the things God wants you to feel. Those are not the things that God wants you to take away from you. What God wants you to do is quit living by sight. Start living by faith. And He's going to cause all things to work to your good, according to His riches and glory. Amen. I have nothing to fear. No, God hasn't healed me. But one thing I've learned is God is in control. And I'm not going to let the rain turn my eyes red. I'm not going to let the rain cause me to complain. Because I know in whom I have believed and am persuaded that He is able to take care of that which I have committed unto His hands against that day. Amen. Would you stand? Again, thank you for being here this morning. I believe that you, by being here or watching from home, that this message was for you, that God needed you to hear it. And that in some way, in some part, it will help you as you face those mountains that are in your life. Father, we just come to you today and we just thank you for your love. I just thank you this morning, Lord, that I'm gonna have dark times. I'm gonna have raindrops coming down. There's gonna be a point where the storm's so heavy I can't move forward. But there's some things you shared with us this morning. First of all, that's when you do your greatest work in our lives. We should be happy that we have the darkness, that we have the storms. Because God, that's when you bring your greatest victory. And one of the things we need to realize this morning is that victory is on the way. The darker it gets, the lighter it's going to be, the sooner. And we just need to believe in that. We need to trust in that. Lord, we also need to believe that this is just part of the journey of life. It is not the beginning, it's not the end. It's just a small segment that's been taken out of our life. And God, this will soon end, as the scripture says, and it will pass away. We know that. We believe in that. And we take it to heart this morning and expect that to happen in our lives. Lord, we also believe that you care about us, that you protect us, that you're there with us in the darkness. Whatever people are going through today, Lord, let them feel your presence. I like that song. I feel the brush of angels' wings. Lord, I feel that often here, but I pray right now, there are some here this morning and some in the television audience that just need to feel the brush of angels' wings in their life. Lord, let it happen. Let them feel your presence. Let them feel those goosebumps that take place often in your presence. We ask all this in the name and power of Jesus Christ this morning. And everybody said, yeah! You are dismissed.